Coming up, the Brooklyn Nets bubble up in superstar rumblings as Giannis could want out of Milwaukee this offseason. With Sean Marks, quick pivot from a quick pivot? That quick? We dive in coming up next.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, my friends, it is the Locked On Nets podcast, right here, Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. He's Doug Norrie. I'm Adam Marmot. We thank you, as always, for making us your first listen of the day. We're 100% free on all those great platforms. And let you know, today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. And Doug, obviously, the Brooklyn Nets also took down the Dallas Mavericks, and what was certainly a blow to Nick Angstadt and the future of those playoff hopes for Dallas. We'll get to that game potentially here, but really, as we talk about the tank and the long season and maybe another long season next year, the idea that the Brooklyn Nets plan A, as first reported by Brian Lewis, the New York Post, is Giannis, and going after him once again comes to the forefront as the offseason looms.
Yeah, not exactly news. I mean, this has sort of been floated in and around the space for a couple of years, kind of.
Breaking news. Teams like stars, teams with money may pursue if have assets for them.
Yeah, look, it's like not exactly going as planned in Milwaukee this season. They're not exactly circling the drain, but it hasn't been amazing, especially, Dame out and like their team just is kind of on life support because they've mortgaged a lot of the future to try to get stuff around Giannis in the short term, and it didn't exactly work out. And they got Doc Rivers as a coach. Never going to be his fault, so no worries there. But they overall, I think that you can kind of see the writing on the wall where this team is going, because sometimes when you look at superstar players, you kind of say to yourself, well, what does the team have in its war chest to be able to like sort of level up around the guy? And the answer for them is not really anything now. And so at that point, both sides could look at it and say, well, we need to extract the most we can get for Giannis now. That's a tough pill to swallow because he means so much to the city of Milwaukee championship. And he's kind of like, probably the most famous buck at this point. And then two, it's like Giannis, who has been good about not talking about this in season, but has kind of relayed the message before, wants to win championships, is interested in winning. That's the whole plan. And so you can kind of see it coming here. Yeah. And so when the Nets, who have all the cap space in the world and a ton of picks and not a ton to send back in a trade, honestly, but overall, it's not surprising to hear his name as part of the plan for the Nets. I don't know if that means it's like likely or anything, but it's not surprising that this would be where it's going, because this is, again, like not exactly news, although it's interesting timing that is coming out now.
Well, that's the part of it. I mean, the timing that as the season is winding down, obviously, the fact that it's coming in and around from this isn't being talked about. Although if you went over and looked at local coverage of the Milwaukee Bucks, maybe this is at the forefront of the entire fan base's mind all the time, right? What does it mean? And when something like the injury for Dame Lillard comes up, again, it resurfaces. We don't have any money. We don't have a lot of assets. Like, how will we improve this team to make sure that Giannis wants to remain here, for the long haul, as he's going to be 31 years old? The fact that it comes from the Nets side of it and that you hear that this is on the Nets radar, to your point, should it be surprising that maybe the only viable right age range kind of star that's also already well established as a championship level talent, not other guys? We can talk about John Morant. We could talk about lower level players like, we talked about Lonzo Ball the other day. We could talk about guys that have some real upside, but a lot of injuries like Zion Williamson. We can have those conversations. But Giannis is the guy that's won a championship. Giannis is the guy that's like the premier talent in the league. And the Brooklyn Nets are maybe the only team from a cap standpoint and from an asset standpoint that could walk in the door with Milwaukee and say, hey, what are we looking at? What do you like? Now, you make the interesting point about returning players, because the whole of assets that you could send to Milwaukee is one thing, and next year's draft class would probably be critical. But the other side of it being Cam Thomas, Cam Johnson, a lot of these kind of guys that we have all of our discussions about, what do they actually mean for the Nets and what do they mean league wide? That to me is interesting. Now, flippable certainly in a guy like Cam Johnson we talked about before. I guess the real question is, do you think that this will be an actual conversation that happens this summer? Or do you think that Milwaukee's going to try to find a way to make this interesting to keep Giannis around?
I think they're going to try to find a way to keep it one more year, and they're going to hope that Dame comes back, and they're both in their contract for next year. Giannis is still 2 more years out with a player option in 27, 28. I mean, they got Kuzma. He stinks, so I'm not really sure like what they're going to do with him. But,
Yeah.
Brook Lopez is a free agent this year. That's going to be a tough re-sign even if they're able to do it, which I'm not sure they are. They got a couple of these player options, like Pat Connaughton, $9.5 million. He probably picks that up. Like there's I think there's just they're not going to have a lot of ways to get better. And I think they're going to be heavily incentivized to at least try to take it to like the trade deadline or something to see where they are. They have Doc, they have Dame, they have Giannis. No other situation that he could probably ask out into. Well, I take that back. He could probably ask out into another situation. And so there's like 2 separate things here. There's is it likely to happen this summer? No, I don't think it's likely to happen this summer. But like on the Milwaukee side, I think they'll be like, hey, I think the conversation will go something like this. Look, we have Dame. We're going to do right by you. You have time on this contract, right? Like you're not going to, if it doesn't work, you're not going to be stuck here forever, but we owe it to everyone to like give this a try to start the season. Like that's my guess. Like sort of maybe like something like with the Durant thing at the year that he got traded, right?
Yeah.
Which is like, I mean, he actually asked for the trade. I doubt Giannis will ask for a trade this summer. Okay. So let's start there. But 2, and they get a little bit of an out that Dame like got hurt. Well, he's got the blood clots. Like, but it's like a little different that Dame is not playing and they're not doing well. It's always a little different when that happens, as if like, oh, we're fully healthy, and like the Phoenix thing where it's like we're kind of fully healthy and we stink. It's like, okay, well, we see they can't get better. This is a little different situation. I'll get to the net. We can get to like the returning player thing from the Nets thing in a second. But I think that just to start, I would say it's very unlikely given the current state of their team and what Giannis means to the city. He's kind of got like a legacy to protect here. I think that it's very unlikely that anything happens with him this summer. But I think I would start the clock at like next trade deadline or something like that. Like that feels a little bit more realistic.
And by the way, we'll talk about why the Dame Lillard injury impacts this both ways, but how the Brooklyn Nets getting another offseason and another draft in before next year's deadline would certainly make it more interesting as these conversations come up. We'll do that here in just one moment.
Before we get to that, tell you about our friends over at Prize Picks. Baseball season's in full swing. No better way to get in on the action with Prize Picks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. Look, with Prize Picks, it's super easy. You're going more or less on at least 2 player projections. You can win up to 1,000 times your 1,000 times your cash. You can go strikeouts, RBIs, first inning runs. Prize Picks keeps every game exciting. You're building those lineups. Maybe you're heading over to those torpedo bats that's happened over there over for the Yankees. I mean, that's something. If you just want to go a little bit more on whichever guy is just swinging those bomb drillers, that might be the way to go over on Prize Picks. And like you said, you can just pick the stats you like: RBIs, home runs, first inning runs. It's all there for you over on Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNBA for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game.
And when you're done with that, my friends, why don't you go ahead and head over to Monarch Money? Because you ever check your bank account? It's a question I'm going to ask you. I ask myself all the time and wonder, where'd all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Surprising insights, like when I was first starting to use this, I didn't realize how much I spent on food deliveries, right? So sometimes you think about just managing your money, but it's also about realizing how much you overspend on certain things, not to mention the easy collaboration where you can manage your money with your partner in a smoother than effort as you can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use promo code LOCKEDONNBA at monarch.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, promo code Locked On NBA for half off your first year. All right. As we continue today's Locked On Nets episode, talking about, Giannis Antetokounmpo. I think I nailed that, by the way. I should be announcing him for game nights and potentially for the Brooklyn Nets when he comes over. But the interesting thing, I think, before we talk about the return for Brooklyn, because there's something about this where we've done it so many times before. Any situation where it's, this is why it's so good for Brooklyn. This is why it all works out. Yeah, until something else happens. Look at the trade deadline this past season, right now this year. I mean, when you saw Luka, just like randomly, I was like, hey, guess what? We're willing to trade him. Okay, LA, we're sending him there. You send back AD. Boom, boom. A team and a trade that nobody saw coming surfaces and changes the outlook. Just real quick on the Dame Lillard side of it. This, I think, makes it easier to, you mentioned before about for Milwaukee to say, yeah, we really do need to give it one more go, because nobody's going to take Damian Lillard off our hands in that contract either. So even if they're willing to explore moving Giannis and getting a haul back, I don't know what they're going to do with Lillard and his contract that, at least, while it may not be forever, he's under contract through 26, 27, making almost $60 million. That is going to look really ugly if you no longer have you. What's going to look like? It's going to look a lot like the Blazers. And that was not a successful situation, even when you had Dame Lillard for all those years. So I think that helps Milwaukee maybe push the timeline back a little bit on making this decision.
You mean like trying to make it work with Lillard? Is that what you mean? Like
trying to make it work with Giannis and just saying like, hey man, like let's keep it together, because they know in their mind, even if we move Giannis, we're stuck with Lillard's is an amazing player, but you're kind of stuck with him. You're not going to look at having Lillard. And even if you move Giannis in his contract, you still have to make the money match. So you're still going to be stuck with some guys. Like, it's a lot of legwork to lose your superstar and then try to reconfigure it around a veteran, backcourt player. That has not been the recipe for success in the modern NBA in terms of deep playoff runs and winning championships. So that makes it easier, as if it's hard to convince yourself to hold on to Giannis as long as possible.
And if you want to take a look at like how it can go wrong, like look no further than what happened in Dallas this year. I mean, you trade these franchise citywide heroes, which they basically are, around places where it's not like guys are clamoring over each other to go sign in Milwaukee. Like, you have to basically draft these guys or trade, a lot for them to get them. So,
and Lillard's not a guy that's going to attract stars to Milwaukee at this stage of his career.
And so, and look what happens to these GMs. I mean, Nico Harrison's like public enemy number one in Dallas. Like, now I don't think we're in that kind of situation here, but watch what happens to these GMs when they trade away guys who are, basically have the keys to the city, which Giannis does. And so, I mean, could be the greatest buck. He's the greatest buck ever. Right. And so, and I know, like, who else? I mean, Abdul-Jabbar, like other guys played there, but like, he's going to be the best one who won the championship. So I just think it's just, there's like so much existential risk about even doing it too. Like, he's worth, like, put it this way, you can't even value him correctly based on just the stats, because he means more to the city than anything else. So they just have to work so hard to be able to keep him, I think. And you're right. It's not like, I don't even know how they could trade Lillard at this point, or like what even his market would look like. Who's trading for him? And so you just have all these problems that they have, that the only path they have to hope for is to say, hey, stick with us here. Let's see what we can do. Maybe we get lucky. Maybe like another East team gets injured. I don't know. Like, there's really no great path for them, but I just think he means considerably more to them than most other stars mean to their city. And a comparable one might have been like Luka.
Yeah.
And Mavs fans are in the great exodus right now. It's like, forget it. We'll just do something else. It's like the worst season ever. So I don't know. I think there's just like a very recent example of why you definitely don't want to do this under the cover at night, but you for sure want to make sure it's got like everything looks good on the way out with the optics.
And then the other part of this is too, so there's that side of it from a Milwaukee Bucks standpoint, and then there's also the side of it from a Brooklyn Nets standpoint. So, okay, yes, the Nets can come to the table and say, we have all these picks, and next year's going to be a deep draft class. Like, let's say it's this offseason. We'll open it up for you. We want to get them. Now, we can go into the big debate about if that's worth it or not and what it means, and then go and get more stars, all that stuff. What I find really fascinating is you look around the league and you see that so basically very few teams are going to have cap space going forward. You have some of these really big contracts. I do start to wonder about other teams that have big money, maybe a couple of higher profile guys. Not many are going to be on the level of a Giannis, obviously, but where if it gets to a place where Milwaukee is going to shop Giannis, the conversation actually is about, okay, well, if Giannis is going out, where do we maybe send him where it's not even so much about the picks as it is about bringing in talent that if we're going to be stuck, quote unquote, with Damian Lillard, how do we bring in, if Giannis is an A+, right? An A+ of NBA talent right now, how do we get ourselves like 2 B+ out of this? How do we get a couple of guys that have some big money on the books, but would mean we still stay competitive? We're still a 5th seed in the Eastern Conference and we keep selling to our fan base, we're not going to be bad anytime soon. We've had this debate before about the Brooklyn Nets and going full tank. Like, it's really tricky to do that. And I think you're right. Once you jettison a star like that, it's even harder to turn around and say, and now we're going to be the worst you've ever seen for the next 2 to 3 seasons. So I think that could get more teams involved than maybe we think about right now. And just, oh, Nets have money, Nets have picks, they're going to be the easiest, best destination for this. There's a lot of versions where it might play out differently.
Well, remember, I think the Bucks don't even have like all their picks too. I don't even think they can like tank either. And so
no, that's why that's where the Nets like
they just have to get something back. And
yeah, Nets have done this, right? Oh, we'll watch other people's picks. We know how that works. You end up thinking it's going to pan out. Another team gets better too soon, and you don't have anything to send back. To rebuild with. Excuse me.
Right, exactly. And so I just think that, like, you know, they're going to have to get something back. And then you have to look at the team. So this is where the Nets thing gets weird, because who do the Nets even – we'll just go with this right now. Who do the Nets – and then I can look through some other teams and probably make better cases for them. But, like, who do the Nets – I don't even know how they facilitate the trade. Like,
it's
you
Nick Claxton, it's Cam Johnson, and it's a sign and trade with Cam Thomas, right? I mean –
and then it's Giannis and who? And who's Giannis playing with? Like, Giannis and Keon Johnson? Like, who's Giannis going to play with in this scenario? So, like, you can't trade these guys. Like, you can trade, but you can maybe trade Claxton. His stock's taken a massive hit, I think, this year. So, Cam Johnson, you need to keep him. Like, Cam Johnson's the guy you need to keep to pair with Giannis, and then hope you get someone that's even better, and he's like the 3rd or 4th best player. Like, you can't just trade these guys and have Giannis playing with, you know, whoever you draft this year. Like, that doesn't make any sense. So I think the thing that seems to get forgotten in this Giannis thing is, who do the Nets send back? I just don't even know who how do they even match the salary? They'd have to trade to bring in salary, which is almost going to be depressed, like is going to be sort of negative equity salary. And then you trade the picks on top of it. But I just don't even know how they get there. Again, like, they could trade Cam Johnson, but like, at what point, what's the point? What's the point? And who are they signing? What guy are they signing that's going to be that they can that's what I mean. They don't even have them on the books right now. They don't even have the money. They don't even have the guys to trade. Can they even make a trade? Actually, I take this back right now. Can they even make a trade for Giannis this summer? Like, is it even possible?
Yeah, well, I mean, Giannis is going to be Giannis is on the books for, what is it, 54 million next year. So, like, yes, they have they can
who do they trade?
Again, the Cam Johnson, the Nicholas Claxton, like, they have the money on the books to be able to go.
Okay, well, that's okay, but let's assume that is not a starter because they need Cam Johnson. So, like, forget him. They can't trade Cam Johnson. I'll give you Claxton. At that point,
we know the conversation is going to be, right. We've heard other people talk about what is the contract going to be for Cam Thomas. That probably is that's probably where it starts to happen, right? You end up looking at a guy and saying, like, we're going to sign Cam Thomas to a slightly bloated contract to help put it together with like a Nicholas Claxton. Now you're in the mid-40s.
And then pair him with Lillard. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Like, sorry to interrupt you, but this is what I mean. And then you pair Cam Thomas with Damian Lillard. Like, this is why it's not.
Of course. Yeah, I'm only. Listen, I'm not. We're devil's advocating the devil's advocate. 100%. Right. Yeah. Because and this is to the point that we've made. And on the other side, we'll drill this point home. We get it. Having Giannis is awesome. If you think that either Doug or I are sitting here today on April 2nd, 2025, saying, Giannis, who wants him? Who needs him? That's not what's happening here. It's the second after you make the trade for Giannis. And listen, hey, you need the superstar. Everybody wants the superstar. What happens next? And how do you go about getting it? Because even after you find a way to cobble salaries, you've already given up who knows how many first-round picks to bring Giannis in the door. We'll talk about what that scenario looks like and why other teams would probably have a better chance to get into these waters if Giannis were to go to market. We'll do that here in just one moment. Dramatic pause as we conclude today's Locked On Nets episode, because you may be excited about the idea of getting Giannis, and we would love to have him. And when the conversation happens in the offseason, we're going to be right here talking about, listen, if it looks like this can come to fruition, what does it look like? How can they add some other players? But if you told me right now the Nets added Giannis and had to give up the pieces that we talk about, right, the Cam Johnsons, even though they wouldn't want to do that because that's who you need on this team if you get Giannis, and they give Nick Claxton. Where are you? You have Giannis now. Where are you in the landscape of the Eastern Conference playoffs? where are you in terms of title contention? And oh, by the way, we've seen these trades. Sean Marks has executed some of these trades in terms of hauls that you get back. So even though we sit here and we say, yes, the Brooklyn Nets have 29 total picks moving forward, your first round pick is gone. The Milwaukee pick is back in their pocket now. Maybe another one of your first round picks this year is gone. In 2026, that pick is gone. In 2027, is 2 out of those 3 picks gone. So now you've got Giannis. And as he's 32 and 33 and 34, and I know everyone, who cares? Not that old. Okay, great. But just paint the picture for me. When the free agents come up, yes, they'll want to come to Brooklyn and play with Giannis 100%. But that's at least another year away. And you're not going to have any of that draft capital. Like, it's a brutal spot to be in. And to be on the anti-getting Giannis is a really hard line to take here. But we always say that fans lose sight of the fact that you don't get him for free. It may cost you everything, and then you try to figure out how to make yourself competitive. They've had Giannis his entire career in Milwaukee. They won a championship, but it took a lot of work to get there, and now they're on the precipice of having to make a hard choice about losing him. Yeah,
I just think it's going to be an interesting situation. I was actually just looking through some of these other teams, too, trying to figure out, like, what would be a good landing spot. He'll have a huge market. He's still awesome. So I know, and I agree with you. The part where the Nets trade for Giannis, I'm fine with it. Like I know that it doesn't necessarily fit the timeline. As long as it's not like the one scenario that we just outlined, which was it's him and literal rookies, like that wouldn't seem to make a lot of sense. Giannis would be the best player that ever played for the Nets franchise. Like if he came in tomorrow. So Durant.
Can I ask something real quick here?
I take it back. Durant's amazing too. They'd you know what I mean? Like it'd be among the very best players and probably make a case for it. So it's like, I'm all for it. But I just don't think it just like wouldn't make any sense. Like, cause I don't know what you would get out of it, but I'm not trying to be negative about it necessarily. Just like trying to be realistic.
Do you think, I just came to mind here. Nets go to the lottery against all odds in their own ineptitude. They spike the number 1 overall pick. Is there any world where the Nets could give up everything else other than that number 1 overall pick to get Giannis? And now you're talking about, hey, game 1 of 82 next season, Cooper Flag and Giannis together on a Brooklyn Nets court. Like, if you can paint that scenario and I can give you up 8 first-round picks and I got those 2 guys, I probably will figure out the rest of the details after if I can spike that opportunity. And I might even say that if they get the 2nd overall pick potentially, and it's Dylan Harper, like, I could convince myself if I can keep that 1 pick away from Milwaukee in the upcoming draft.
I'll tell you what would be good for the content numbers. Oh, baby. That's all we care about.
Hey,
just like every single episode
of Cooper Flag and Giannis in every single title.
Every title that you could possibly imagine, it would just be an SEO bonanza on this. And I think that, like, from that standpoint, I'm all for it. Besides that, it's hard to see it happen. I know you're being tongue in cheek, but like I don't think these are realistic scenarios. And I think overall, the more that we've kind of talked this out, I land in the one. I think the Nets are smart to say it's really smart for the Nets from a positioning standpoint to be like, yeah, we want Giannis now. Okay, because remember, just saying it doesn't mean anything. Right. They said they wanted to keep Mikal Bridges too, and he got shipped off. So like whatever. The easiest thing ever for them to do right now, especially when they have like kind of nobody they can really trade and nobody else, and no top 50 players really, and no young players, and guys who haven't even been drafted yet. The easiest thing ever to say is Giannis. Yeah, that's plan 1. Because you don't sacrifice anything. See, it'd be different if like OKC went out there and said, yeah, Giannis is plan 1. Because then because the next thing that happened would be like, well, who's going to get traded? Which one of Chet or Jalen Williams or, which one of these guys is going to get traded to play with Giannis? And that would be, so they would never come out and say that. The Nets there's no risk in the Nets being like, yeah, he's the best player. Because like, who are they contending with in the locker room? Like, who's getting mad? Trendon Watford's like, oh, what about me? There's just none of that is going to happen, right? None of that stuff.
Brian Lewis reports Keon Johnson not happy about the pursuit of Giannis for his future.
That's what I mean. It's the easiest thing ever for them to say right in this moment that says like he's plan number 1, because it just doesn't cost them anything to say it. And when it comes down to it, if they're able to actually put a trade together or it makes sense, then it always looked great. He was always part of the plan. And if it doesn't come together, it's like he was part of the plan, but it just didn't come together. Like there's nothing, you're not making any player on the team mad. There's no, because remember all this Giannis stuff that's come out. We're the first ones, I think, that I've read everything that's talked about Giannis. Are we the first ones that said, hey, who they trade? How would they even do it? Like, I haven't seen that posited at all. Like, it's just like, yeah, let's go get him or let's not. No one's actually put together a trade package. You know why? Because I don't think it exists. Like, I don't even think it exists. And I think that's where it's like the easiest thing ever for the Nets to say.
By the way, this is interesting. So we'll close out on this because hey, guess what? This conversation is going to go on for the rest of the season and then into the offseason and towards the draft. But I like my scenario. Cooper Flag, Giannis. I think that's a winning combination and we can really all get behind that. But there was this. So I wondered if, because you do the stat projections all the time, top 50 scorers, points per game average this season. How many of them are 32 years or older?
Top 50. Say it again.
Top 50 scorers, points per game in the league this year. How many are 32 years or older?
Oh man. 6?
Buddy, you're not almost the best in the business for nothing. 5. There are 5 guys in the top 50. And if you go top 25, there's 4 of them there, and it's Kevin Durant, right? And it's the usual suspects you would think. Yeah. But I bring that up to say, like, we all know, and by the way, go back to last year when Doug was, I'm not going to say dying on a hill. He was on the hill, just, boot kicking people in the face around this idea of, oh, players will be great well into their 30s. Look at this guy. Look at that guy. Awesome. The prime is not there. The prime is not when you're 32, 33, 34. No. There are unicorns like Kevin Durant. You know what else happens? Kevin Durant gets hurt and the body starts to break down in those elite talents. And even in that scenario, you have Kevin Durant and he's doing that and your team stinks for just insane, fails logic with what's going on with Phoenix this year. But my point there is, like, if it takes you enough, you get Giannis and he's going to be 31 and then takes another year and he's going to be 32. Like, we've talked about this a lot before. There are guys like Luka. There's guys like Jokic, and Kevin Durant is one of these guys whose games are much more guarded against aging, right? This isn't a knock on Giannis. I just don't know what Giannis will be when he's 34, 35. Again, if you put him on my team tomorrow, I'm ecstatic. No complaints here. But it is a different equation when you think about certain models of players versus others. And just the idea, like, will Giannis be a top 15 scorer 3 years from now? I don't know. Can you build a great team around him? Of course you can. But it's just one of those things that I think people, again, things that they forget about. It's like the prime is what matters most here. 20, 26, 27, 28 years old. That's when you need to be crushing it and trying to ride that wave to a championship. It's why the Luka to LA is incredible for Los Angeles, because he's going to be right in his prime for the next 3 years and then even beyond that. And I think that's just another one of those things. Why? Because nobody likes nobody likes realistic podcasts talking about like why it does or does not make sense for the Nets to trade for Giannis. But it is the reality. And then that's the only thing we kind of know how to do on this show.
Last note on this. I think he ages like mostly okay. I think it's different than some other guys, but like I think the athleticism actually probably hangs around enough. He's so unique in the way that he kind of punishes teams that he can just do things like Kevin Durant.
He's
you knew age well because
closer to the LeBron mold, would you say? Like in terms of like the physicality, like, you know what I mean? Like if you're looking at him from pure shooting, we talk about Luka, we talk about KD, we talk about those guys. It's like, oh, they're shot, able to get it off. Like that'll always be pure for them. Whereas LeBron has held on to his physicality as he's aged, and that's still remained a big part of his calling card.
Yeah, he still gets downhill. He's still got like the 7'3" wingspan, like 7'4" wingspan. Like he can still take 2 steps from half court and dunk, basically. That stuff is not really going to go away. It doesn't look like KD just hitting jumpers, in your grill till he turns 62 and is on Social Security or whatever. But it's not that. But I actually, and Giannis has been like remarkably like pretty healthy. Like he's going to end up playing 70 games about this year, 70 last year, 60 on lock. Like he's been mostly pretty healthy. So I actually think he ages fine into like his age 33, 34 season or good enough. It's a little concerning that like the shooting's just never gotten better, but it's like I don't know. How much do you care, really? I don't know. I think it's fine. The guys I get worried about, like the
How
guys
much
like
do you
Dame.
care for a guy who won the MVP, and has finished top 4 in MVP voting every single season since 2018-19, has Defensive Player of the Year on his resume and all this other stuff, right?
Yeah, the guys that like age a little worse are like guys like Dame. It's like, well, it's small, and if you lose a step, it's kind of done, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
you're in
yeah.
big trouble. Guys like this, or if you're just a straight up 5 who kind of can't get up down the court anymore, then you might be in trouble. These guys that are in betweens, I think that I worry less about. As for, if you're a little bit toward the middle of the meaty part of the spectrum, I get a little less worried about it. Okay, we're gonna get out of here. Hey, look.
Wow,
Giannis
sorry.
probably,
Last note, I didn't realize that Giannis averages under 1 3-point attempt per game, and he's shooting under 18% this season.
yeah.
That has
Yeah,
nothing to
it's
do
like-
with his game. I was just looking over the stats and being like, you're right. Like, it does look, he's aging well. The numbers, he shoots 60%, from the field overall, 62%. I'm like, oh, great. And I go, good Lord. I just did.
Well, in his defense, he at least stopped taking them. Like,
by the way, it's good. Hey, done with that. Guess what? I'm so good in a league predicated on the 3-pointer. It doesn't matter that I don't do it. Like that. That's how good Giannis is, for his career.
For sure. All right. Make sure you subscribe to Locked On. That's where you listen to podcasts. Make sure you subscribe over on YouTube as well. Free for us, or free for you. Not free for us technically, but it helps us. It helps us. So those are the 2 number 1 ways. I did it. That you can help the show. Just hit like and subscribe wherever you listen.
There's only so many ways to do it, but ultimately we do want you to do it. There's one way to find out if a man is honest. Ask him. If he says yes, you know that he's a crook, and that is Groucho Marx.
Oh, one of the all-time great poets. We're back in tomorrow talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.
Basketball. Yeah.